Welcome to Kaleidoscope S4IG. Let's talk. Sri Lanka celebrates 75 years of independence on the 4th of February, but it's now more than a reminder of our country's independence. At a time when Sri Lankans are finding it difficult to make ends meet, is there anything worth celebrating? Especially spending 200 million rupees, which can be used for a number of other priorities. So, here's the Pethiyagoda pages with scientist, conservationist and public policy advocate Rohan Pethiyagoda on S4IG Let's Talk with some home truths about this year's independence and what it means for Sri Lankans. Rohan, welcome. So we are all agog about Independence Day, but what is independence for Sri Lanka at this point? Is it meaningful or is it meaningless?
I think independence is always meaningful. It's just that I don't think we've got the full meaning, the implications of independence. Many people feel that in 1948 we became independent of the United Kingdom. In fact, it was the other way around. Remember, the flow of resources was from the colonies to the mother country, not the other way around. And so it was that Britain became independent of us, which we often forget. And then we were cut off and we're on our own for the last 75 years. And I think if we measure the progress made in those 75 years compared with the progress made in the preceding 75 years, the years before independence, we haven't done so well. We started at the top of the Asian League in 1948. We've fallen behind. Many countries have zoomed ahead of us: South Korea, Taiwan, even Indonesia, Malaysia for sure. So we've lagged behind. And that is a pity, because we had a really good head start of the Asian countries after the Second World War, and we lost the edge.
Are we really independent, given that we are, we are still beholden to the West, the South, the East, and you name it?
That's our own fault. If you think about it, 4 years after independence, in 1952, we had the first general strike, the so-called Hartal. And that was about retaining the rice ration, subsidized rice, that was given out from the time of the Second World War. And people insisted that they get it. The unwillingness of the Sri Lankan people to stand on their own 2 feet and earn an honest living has been the bane of this country. And the only way that politicians can get themselves elected is by pandering to that thirst for free stuff. And that's, I think, in large measure the thing that's pulled us down. So governments have successively borrowed. Right now, we've borrowed north of 100% of GDP. Our borrowing standard, which is crazy. We borrow more than we produce.
How can we justify spending 200 million on an Independence Day celebration when we're actually standing with a begging bowl for our daily necessities?
I can answer that in 2 ways. I'm going to answer it the unpopular way. Government spending this year is 5.8 trillion rupees. 200 million rupees is a rounding error. It's not a significant amount of money. Even if you look at defense spending, and most of this money, the 200 million that's been spent, is being spent through the defense establishment. Defense spending is 600 billion this year. If you divide that by the number of days and the number of hours in the year, it works out at about 80 million rupees per hour. Regardless of what you do, 80 million rupees gets spent every hour by the defense establishment. So this is less than 3 hours worth of spending. This is not a big deal. So the 200 million rupees is a drop in the ocean. It's insignificant. Whether the government should have signaled to the country that it wanted to tone things down and give a more austere appearance, yeah, sure, that's up for debate. But the money itself is irrelevant. It's insignificant.
How do you suggest the President should have handled Independence Day this year?
Toning it down would have helped, but at the same time, the President is worried about civil order going into the next 2 years of his term. It's going to get worse as time goes on, because there's going to be strikes asking for higher wages, for example. People can't manage the present level of the cost of living and taxation. So there might be civil disobedience. He needs the armed forces on his side. So I think what he's done is probably the right thing, looking at it from his point of view. Looking at it from the country's point of view, it's an altogether wrong signal, because it smacks of repression.
With the rest of the world knowing how badly off we are, what is the signal we are sending out to our donors, our those who are going to be giving us funds, and even to the IMF for that matter?
These donors and the IMF and the international agencies have known the nature of Sri Lankan politicians for generations now. Nothing's changed. So they know the character of the people they're dealing with, that they're generally petty, small-minded people, regardless of which party you talk about. And so I don't think there's anything new. No one's going to wake up in bed and say, oh, we're really surprised that Sri Lanka is having this big celebration.
Thank you so much, Rohan. You've just brought everybody down to the ground, basically. That was Rohan Pethiyagoda on the Pethiyagoda pages, and we've been chatting about the ground realities of Independence Day this year. To our truly incomparable partners on the show, Skills for Inclusive Growth and Australian Aid, Selinko Life, CDB, the morning newspaper Park Street Gourmet, and Zip Zip. Thank you. If you like Kaleidoscope, subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn.